We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us on this Monday. Nick Barris here along with Assistant District Attorney Chad Jackson in Davidson County. He, of course, was leading the prosecution of RaDonda Vaught, who was convicted this past Friday in a controversial case. A lot of reaction to it after the fact. And we're on Facebook at newschannel5.com. We're going to get to the phone calls here in just a moment. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you coming on this morning, Chad. One other question. I know that the DA's office had made a comment after the fact about the makeup of the jury. You know, we're seeking to see if some jurors will talk to us. We have not been able to reach them yet. If they're willing to, we'd love to talk to them to get their take on how they came back with this verdict. But the makeup of it, I think you have said that there were some medical professionals on, and I think a lot of viewers are wondering, well, what do you mean medical professionals? And I guess if there's a nurse on the jury, someone might say, wow, a nurse voted to convict here. What can you tell us about the jury?
That's exactly the case. One juror was a nurse.
Do we know what type of nurse or how long ago or what she was involved with?
I don't want to get too much into detail, but she did work with patients. So she was actually in healthcare, administered medications. And another juror, I believe, had about 14 years of experience worth of healthcare as well. So we had two of those individuals that were on the jury that voted to convict RaDonda Vaught.
Okay, and again, the jury chosen here in Davidson County.
Yes.
And the trial was about, what would you say, 4 days or so, I guess, the way it broke down?
It was 3 full days.
3 full days, and then the jury deliberated for some 4 hours, which is not a long time for a jury to deliberate. They did come back not guilty of reckless homicide. What was your take on that?
I thought it was appropriate and fair under the circumstances. They heard the evidence. They couldn't determine that she consciously disregarded the consequences of her actions, and I think that's perfectly fine for them to have found that she was criminally negligent and falling and deviating so far from the standard of care that it was criminally negligent for her to have done that.
We know that prior to this, she had lost her license. She was, no longer now she has a felony on her record.
Yes.
But I mean, some are saying, wouldn't it be enough under these circumstances civilly to, she loses her license and can no longer practice? But you felt in the DA's office that punishment was warranted.
Right. Well, the law applies to everyone, whether you're a nurse or not, whether you're a lawyer or a doctor, or just anybody else on the street. We can't pick and choose when somebody acts this egregiously just to give them a pass because they're a nurse. And I want to reiterate, this has never happened before. This is not a watershed event, but a pinnacle event in the fact that RaDonda Vaught did so many things wrong that it could not be excused, and the jury agreed with that.
So you don't believe that this verdict in a case like this, which you are correct, is very rare. That's one reason the whole country was watching, sets a dangerous precedent where all of a sudden now a bunch of nurses are going to be prosecuted criminally for mistakes they make.
No, that is not what this case is about at all. It is important to understand that so many things happened that could have been prevented by Ms. Vaught. It was not just a simple mistake. It was a culmination of many things she did. As my analogy to the jury was, she was driving with her eyes closed. And there's no excuse for that. If you're driving down the road and you close your eyes and you intentionally careen down Broadway and kill somebody, that's a crime.
Okay, let's take a few phone calls. We'll start off with Jared. Jared, good morning. Hi, Jared.
Hi, how are you?
Good. What's on your mind?
Hi, I got a question for you, Chad. Hi, Chad, you also know me as much as a Muslim. I'm the dictator of the house, etc. I'm all over TikTok and I'm all over your Facebook. Question for you. You're aware that Dr. Zimmerman signed a death certificate 2 years ago? That was incorrect, and he's the one who signed this one, am I right?
Yes, he did sign the death certificate.
Right, and he falsified a death certificate 2 years ago. Anyway, I just moving on from that. Moving on from that really quickly.
Hey, Jared, we're having trouble. Are you on a speakerphone? We can barely hear you. You got to clear up your line, or we're going to have to move on. Can you talk directly into the phone?
Can you hear me better?
Okay, that's better. Go ahead. Speak into the phone. Okay.
Got it. So, I guess my second question is when originally this before the third party was Vanderbilt, and when CMS got involved. RaDonda Vaught was actually cleared by the Board of Nursing. Now, the Board of Nursing has not come out to say why they reversed their decision. My question for you is why did you insist that the Board of Nursing do their disciplinary process before you charging in her court? Was it because RaDonda Vaught could have got up there to plead the fifth and you needed to circumvent that with the disciplinary board's action? Because you brought that in court.
Okay, it had something to do along the lines with the license, and I'm sorry, I couldn't make out everything he was saying there.
Trouble too.
But was there any, the fact that, originally I think that, there was a complaint filed ultimately that then led to the license being revoked, I suppose. Did that have any bearing on your prosecution? What happened to her on that? You were completely separate from that?
No, yes, completely. This came to us from the TBI when they got the tip, and CMS was investigating because no one at this point had known that there was a patient death related to the medication error.
Okay.
So that's why the nursing board then went back and had to reinstitute proceedings, because it was not previously known to them. Because the issue we had with Dr. Zimmerman and the death certificate was RaDonda Vaught never scanned the medicine into the electronic medical record, or the medical record, the MAR is what we called it. And so no one saw the vecuronium bromide had been given. So there was all the confusion during all of this about how Charlene Murphy died. And it was not until later cleared up with, and it was still never in the record.
Okay.
So it was cleared up by her admission, saying this, showing the vecuronium, seeing the vecuronium, admitting that she'd given it, then the interviews that came after that. So it took a while to figure out actually how she died. But it was never officially in the record, and Dr. Zimmerman could only opine from the record, and doctors can only give a death certificate of natural causes.
And Vaught, we heard some of the audio. I mean, she was upfront about what happened when she was confronted, and she, you could tell she was very, very upset. Some people are wondering, because of the way that played out, that was all on what she did or didn't do, as opposed to a, quote, cover-up by Vanderbilt, in your opinion?
Yes. I saw no evidence of a cover-up from Vanderbilt with anything. I mean, but we were looking at this event regarding Charlene Murphy and RaDonda Vaught.
Okay. Let's go next to Ann. Ann, good morning. Go ahead, Ann.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First, let me say that I only saw one day of testimony. Second, I am a retired neurocritical care nurse. And third, I disagree with the verdict or the fact that I feel she knows exactly what she did. But bottom line, when I retired from nursing, one, a doctor had to write an order for a medicine, and two, a paralytic was never released from the pharmacy or an automatic dispensing anything unless it was released from the pharmacy. And I know that into the medicine field in 2017, you didn't get your hands on a paralytic without it coming from an automatic dispensing system or the pharmacy.
So what's your question, Ann? What's your question?
My question is, was there a look into that system, and two, was there never a plea deal? Because I feel like she would have accepted one.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Did you look into the system again? That was having problems. I mean, it was documented that Vandy had some issues where, doctors and nurses were having to kind of sometimes, go around what the AccuDose machine was able to deliver.
Well, that was actually a misconception during the trial, because there was a downtime for the AccuDose system at Vanderbilt because they were merging the electronic medical records. Terry Bozen testified that for 13 days they had to override almost everything, but even at that time the override rate was only 6%. So there was not an issue with the ADC at all in this situation. Later, Vanderbilt took it so that you couldn't, or removed the override function for vecuronium because this happened, and I guess now it's foreseeable that somebody could possibly try to type in VE in the wrong side of the AccuDose machine and pull the wrong medicine. But before this, no one imagined that someone could search improperly for the name, the incorrect name, in the wrong field, and then not pay attention to the medication you're selecting as you're having it dispensed from the cabinet.
Okay, she was supposed to, just for folks who maybe did not know the details of the case, the patient was supposed to be given something to calm her nerves before she had to go have a scan.
Right.
Okay, that would have relaxed her. Instead, she was given a paralytic, which essentially did what? It
started to paralyze her extremities within probably 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and it eventually moved up through her entire body to where she was awake and alert, but couldn't move, couldn't breathe, and she eventually suffocated.
So the nature of the medicine, eventually, as it moved moved up. She was paralyzed, couldn't call for help, and it shut down her ability to breathe. And she basically suffocated while she was conscious.
She suffered.
Or do we know she was conscious?
She was awake. When you have vecuronium, you are alert and awake while this is all going on until you die.
Did the ME determine what the cause of death is? Did she die from that administration of the drug?
The death certificate signed by the medical examiner was acute vecuronium intoxication that led to her death.
All right, let's go next to Haley. Haley, good morning. Go ahead, Haley.
Hi.
Hi.
I am a nurse, actually, and I did watch and listen to part of the trial. And I actually have a two-part question. So I was there when you had the press conference after the trial, and you said in your own words that this was not an attack on the nursing community, but rather the consequences of the actions of one nurse. What I want to know is, how can you sit there and honestly believe that when you said yourself that she was a help all, which is the nature of being a nurse, to help? So what my question is, with what precedent did you feel comfortable to bring forth criminal charges against a nurse when no criminal charges have been brought against a nurse for an accidental medication error that they admitted to previously? And why did you instead not try to work with proper channels to change laws about the way that paralyzing agents are dispensed?
Okay.
I'll start with the second part. It's not my job to change the laws. The legislature sets the laws. Prosecutor has to enforce them dispassionately and fairly. And in this case, based on the way the statute for gross neglect of an impaired adult is written, it fit the facts. She fell so far below the standard of care that it seemed to fit, and we were going to put this case in front of a jury and let them decide. And I forgot the part one of your question.
Kind of like, not an attack.
Well, the precedent for this.
You're right.
And it was not an attack on the nursing community. RaDonda Vaught did at least 17 different things wrong.
We have some of those that you listed, and some of them, people may dispute. I don't know if we have the different ones that we can put up. I think we were making some graphics of it, but go ahead and talk. Can you read that off the screen?
Sure.
The viewers seeing that. So this is what you're saying she did wrong. It wasn't just one or two things.
Right. You're right. She took the wrong drug from the ADC, the automatic dispensing cabinet. That was the end result of everything she did while she was there, that she should have been aware that she knew she was wrong because she didn't properly search for the medicine in the ADC. She was on the generic side, and she's searching for midazolam, which is the generic name for Versed, but she types in Versed. So if it's automatically populating, it's only going to pull up medicines with a VE. So the next thing that comes up is vecuronium.
Okay, run through these quickly.
Yeah, sure. So she overrode the computer when she couldn't find it in the patient's profile, but it was already in the patient's profile and had been for 10 minutes. So she clearly didn't look at the computer. She failed to verify it with the pharmacy after she says she couldn't find it in the patient's profile, and then she typed in the incorrect name. When the name came up of the most close drug to VE, it said vecuronium bromide, and she didn't look at the screen as she selected that. Then the drawer opens and pops, a cabinet comes out, and there's a warning, paralyzing agent, on the pocket drawer. It's an orange sticker that we showed to the jury. She pulls the medicine out. There's more stickers underneath the medicine that she grabbed, didn't pay attention to those, and she takes the medicine and never verifies the medication she just pulled out of the drawer. She had an orientee with her who was a nurse. He could have easily verified the medication for her and helped her. And then, I can keep going if you want to run down.
I think we've shown a lot of those there. I have some people on Facebook and others who have contacted me since I've posted, who are nurses actually, who have seen that list, who really paid close attention to the trial. I don't think there's a single nurse out there that likes to see another nurse being prosecuted criminally. They don't. But some of them have said, boy, when I first heard this case, I was outraged. But then when I saw the details of just how beyond the pale it was, and maybe we'll get a caller that says this, recognized that, this is an outlier. It's so beyond what maybe I would have done that I can understand why charges might have been brought. Again, you go to this, and people may be very angry who didn't like this with the DA's office for bringing the charges, but ultimately it was a jury of peers chosen here in Davidson County that took only 4 hours to convict.
Right.
I don't know. And I'll be honest, I did not get to watch every bit of the trial either. I think most people who are commenting did not get to watch every bit of it, but still some very strong opinions. And listen, we've got more coming your way. We're going to take a break. The number 737-7587. We'll get to that, more of your phone calls with our guest this morning as we're talking about the RaDonda Vaught verdict. This is Chad Jackson. He's the assistant district attorney who prosecuted, trying to answer some of your questions as we go to the break. To remind you, we hope to have members of the Tennessee Nursing Association on this week. Also, we're reaching out to RaDonda Vaught herself and her attorney, Peter Stryance. We hope to have them. We're doing individual shows on this to cover it as best as we can as the fallout continues. We'll be back with more right after this.
This is a Storm 5 weather update. For weather on the go, download the Storm Shield app.